Welcome back to Making Money Matter, ladies and gentlemen. I'm your host, Kerry Stevenson, and today I've asked Luke Reinehr. He is the Executive Chairman of Kalamazoo Resources. The ASX code is KZR. I've asked him to come on today because there's been a significant announcement, which I think really underpins a strategy that they've been working on for a while, some changes. You guys need to sit up and take some notice because I think that this could look, not advice, do your own research. You know what I always say, but it could actually make the market say, whoa, this is getting interesting. So, Luke, I really appreciate your time. I know what a busy day this will be for you. So thanks for coming on just as this announcement goes out. First of all, because I haven't had you on the channel for quite some time, can you give our viewers a brief overview of Kalamazoo before we get into what's going on today?
Yeah, thanks, Kerry, and good morning. Kalamazoo, as you know, is a gold company. We've got some pretty significant exploration assets in Victoria. But our primary gold project is the Ashburton Gold Project, which is up in the Pilbara. It's a 1.44 million ounce project at about 2.8 grams a tonne. So it's a good scale project. Mm-hmm. Apart from the gold project, which I'll come back to, Kerry, we also had some significant lithium ground up in the Pilbara and also down south near Kalgoorlie, which we IPO'd about 16 months ago into a company called Kali Metals. And so Kalamazoo, we did a distribution of our a large portion of our shareholding to shareholders, but also we've kept around about 20%. The other major shareholder of Kali Metals is Westgold. So that's going along nicely. It's a good asset, but our focus is on gold, Kerry. And just to give you some background about the Ashburton project, which I think most people would appreciate, is that we purchased that off Northern Star in 2022, and we've spent a fair bit of work on it over the last couple of years. We've redone the JORC resource. We've done a lot of drilling. We've done a lot of metallurgical work as well. But then we were approached by dore mining in the start of last year, so that's 2024, and dore and Kalamazoo entered into an option agreement whereby dore has the option to acquire the Ashburton Gold Project for $33 million. And so we signed that option. It's had up to 18 months to exercise the option while it does all its metallurgical work and drilling on the project, and it's done a significant amount of work in the last 16 to 18 months. We were paid a $3 million non-refundable option fee for that. And of course, then dore has kept it in very good standing and has spent a lot of money on it. But then a little bit of complication happened, Kerry, and that is in May this year, Northern Star acquired dore mining. And the reason why it acquired dore mining was because of the Hemi Gold Project, which is probably Australia's largest undeveloped gold project that's about to be pushed into construction and then production. It's a very significant project, 11 million ounces plus, and Northern Star acquired that project for north of $5 billion. So that's a significant project. But of course, having acquired dore, Northern Star then also assumed the option for the Ashburton project because it now owns dore. It now has the option for the Ashburton project, and that option was due to expire on the 4th of August, which is only a couple of days' time, next week, next Monday. Northern Star have just informed us formally that it won't be exercising the option, and the reason being is its focus is purely on getting the Hemi project developed and in operation. And so that's its core focus. And so it declined to exercise the option. But for us, we think that's an absolutely positive development. We're actually very pleased that that's occurred. And some people might say, well, hang on, you haven't received $30 million for the project. But when we issued that option to dore last February, the Aussie gold price was $3,100. Today, it's $5,200. So you can imagine, add an extra $2,000 on the gold price to a 1.4 million ounce gold project, and all of a sudden we think that the economics of this project has changed dramatically. So we think it's a great development, and we're pushing full steam ahead now on a scoping study, and then once that's completed, hopefully into pre-feasibility, and to get this project hopefully into development.
Luke, the gods were smiling on you, quite frankly, because you got, when I first read, I mean, the announcement's just come out, and I thought, oh, okay, why is that? But you've just explained it really well. You got the 3 million non-refundable deposit.
Yep.
The gold price it's not quite double, but let me tell you, by the end of this year, I think it will have done. We'll be talking 2 to 3. And so the economics really, really stack up for you. So talk to us a little bit more about how it compares to some of your peers, for example, this particular project, because you mentioned before 1.4 million ounces, decent size, 2.8 ounces per tonne, decent grade. So what I want to
2.8 grams a tonne.
Sorry, grams, ounces.
Would have loved it if it had been ounces. 2.8 grams.
Thanks for that pickup. Talk to us about, because you talk about the scoping study and you're going to fast track that. All eyes back on the Ashburton project.
Yes.
I want our audience to understand more about the economics and why this will be potentially something that either you're going to put into production or there's going to be a lot of eyes on this project. Now, what makes this so interesting?
Absolutely, Kerry. So with the Ashburton project, the JORC resource that we had completed on that we did once we acquired it from Northern Star, that was based on a gold price of $2,600 Aussie. Whereas, as you can imagine now, at 5,100, things have changed dramatically. But I guess when Northern Star announced the acquisition of De Grey, we, I guess, took the view, well, what happens if Northern Star didn't exercise the option? We should be prepared. So over the last 2 or 3 months, we've actually been doing a lot of work behind the scenes. And one of the things we did was we have gone and re-optimized the deposit, the main deposit at the Ashburton, and that's called Mount Olympus. And that's the stage 1 deposit. We re-optimized that at both $4,000 and $4,500 per ounce, Kerry, rather than at 2,600, and that's extended the size and the depth of the deposit. So in that one deposit, which is the Mount Olympus deposit, we're now looking at a potential open pit of about 735,000 ounces in one open pit.
Wow.
So if you look at that in regard to scale, and all of a sudden you think, well, if we've got a gold price, it's a couple of $1,000s higher than what it was. The potential cash flow that can be generated out of this project now is very significant. So if we start comparing it then to some of our peers, and that's what people always do, how does it sit? We think it sits very well. And in particular, what we've done, and you will have seen in today's announcement, which we've put out, we've got what we call a peer comparison. And it looks at the enterprise value per resource ounce of our peers. And I think we've got, say, 10 companies in that chart. And that shows that, on similar size projects that are in the development stage, just like, we hopefully get to, or in the scoping stage, which is currently where we are today, that if you look at the comparison, the average EV per ounce valuation per resource ounce is currently sitting at about, I think it's $98. If you look at Kalamazoo's current market valuation per EV ounce, we're currently sitting at, I think it's $17. So you can start to see the leverage now and the opportunity that subject to a positive scoping study, which we're quite confident of, and then moving into pre-feasibility, well, then there's a very good chance that I think the market will look at Kalamazoo, will look at this project, and there could be a significant re-rating. And that's certainly what we're hoping for, Kerry. One of the reasons why I'd say, why hasn't that happened to date, is because everyone assumed that Northern Star or Northern Star had acquired the project. So to your point, yes, it's been a really interesting time. This is a win-win situation for us. If Northern Star had exercised the option and paid us $30 million, well, that's the deal we did, and we would have been very happy with it. But now having declined to exercise the option, we think it's very positive, and we think this is a great chance now to really re-rate Kalamazoo going forward.
I 100% agree with you, because I think I think the market, I agree with you. I think the market said, well, Ashburton Project, that's off with De Grey. What are they doing? And now you've got a completely different market when it comes to gold. So one of the things I wanted to ask you about is, what are the next steps? Because you said you're going to fast track the scoping study, which, by the way, ladies and gentlemen, scoping study just talks is a better understanding of the economics around the project. How does it stack up, and what are they going to be doing? That's correct, isn't it?
Absolutely, Kerry. What it does, it sets out like the optimal pathway for the development of the project. You'll look at different ways of doing it, and one of the reasons why we are doing it is that even though we're quite a high grade deposit at 2.8 grams a ton, most of that resource is a sulfide resource, right? So it's not a typical oxide resource.
So let me stop you there, because some people won't understand sulfide and oxide. So could you just give us the basic guide to that for those of them out there that are just new?
It's more difficult to process the ore to extract the gold in a sulfide process. That's typically if you were to build a sulfide processing plant, which is what, by the way, De Grey and now Northern Star are building at Hemi, because that's a sulfide ore body as well. But what we've done, and we did this when we first acquired the project, is that we looked at a processing strategy whereby we would develop a low-cost, high-grade concentrate. And so we wouldn't actually be producing gold doré. We'd actually be preparing a high-grade concentrate, which we would then sell to a third party to process. Now, that's a low-capital approach, which again we think is very beneficial for Kalamazoo. But what we need to do with this scoping study is actually go through a lot of that processing work now and design work. Fortunately for us, though, Kerry, Northern Star, have very kindly confirmed that all the studies and work that primarily De Grey and now Northern Star have done on this project over the last 18 months, all that data, all that information is being provided to us.
Oh, wow.
At no cost. And part of the reason for that is that De Grey are very supportive of us taking this project forward. Northern Star. It's quite ironic, isn't it, that we bought the project off Northern Star, and then potentially they're going to buy it back from us. So it's quite ironic, but that, or as someone mentioned, it's kind of like a boomerang. But that hasn't happened. But Northern Star still have a royalty over the Ashburton Gold Project. Oh. It's not a onerous royalty, but in that case, they're very supportive, because they'd be pleased if we get this project into production, because that's a win-win situation for them. They potential for an ongoing royalty. So that's very positive, and that's one of the reasons why they're fully supportive of us taking this project forward, because also there's a potential for them to have a financial reward, and that's why they're providing us with a lot of all of this data. But what we need to do now with the scoping study is, as I mentioned, we need to put out the optimal pathway. And to that extent, we've appointed a number of major consulting groups to actually help us with this work. That includes NTEC and BMR, which is really important, we think, taking this project, taking this project forward. Also, who's actually managing this scoping study for us is a gentleman called Simon Coyle. Now, Simon has very deep experience in putting together development programs, and he was, until recently, the GM of operations for Pilbara Minerals, one of Australia's largest lithium companies. But Simon also has experience in gold and iron ore as well. So Simon's managing that project, or the scoping study, and our next steps, and we think that's a fantastic addition to our team. Because of the work that's coming to us, or the data and information from Northern Star and De Grey, we believe that we will be able to fast track this scoping study. And it's not just the work that they've completed, but the work that we've been doing over the last couple of months as well. So we anticipate that we'll release this scoping study in Q4 this year. So, wow. Not very far away. And subject to it stacking up and it being positive, we would then look to be getting into pre-feasibility almost immediately. So we're hitting the road running. And in that regard, Kerry, people often then say, well, okay, well, how are you going to fund it? Well, I can advise that we have just completed a $2 million placement, heavily supported by our major shareholders, directors and management. So, we're very pleased, and I think that's a great endorsement of this project going forward, that directors, including myself, major shareholders, etc., have very quickly supported this with a placement.
Can I just go back to the sulfide versus oxide option? And you're saying that, this is an oxide that you're going to be doing, and low-cost, high-grade concentrate.
Yep.
Given the gold price is so strong at the moment, would this scoping study also potentially look at you creating a dore rather than just a concentrate?
Interesting you should say that. Northern Star, back in 2012, when it had, or it might have been 2013, when it had the Ashburton project, Northern Star did a lot of work on developing its own processing facility for the Ashburton, using what they call the Albion process, which is owned by a company called Glencore. Interestingly, when Northern Star then started acquiring other projects, and so it put the Ashburton on the back burner, and that's how we subsequently got to acquire it. But interestingly, who's announced going down that pathway of the Albion process is a company called JORC Resources, who you probably know as well. Yeah, so it's interesting. They're actually going to kick off on the Albion process. Will we look at it in the scoping study? I'm not sure at this point of time. Maybe that might be something we might look at at pre-feasibility. Depends on what we think is the optimal pathway. But going down, a float concentrate is a much lower cost capital approach, and that at this point in time is what we think we'll be looking at, and that's what we've done a lot of our metallurgical work over the last couple of years on as well. But we will look at it. We will look at all things, Kerry.
Where this project is, and I'm looking at you right now, and there's the Ashburton Project in the background. There's a photograph of it, ladies and gentlemen. That is the Ashburton Project. Talk to us about, I know, again, it's early days, but are there challenges with power, water, infrastructure?
Yeah, I guess if you can see this picture in the background, Kerry, that's the Mount Olympus, I think, behind me on on that image. Previously, 300,000 ounces of gold has been mined at the Ashburton Gold Project. That was done in the period, I think it was 1996 to 2005, something like that, by companies called SEPA and others. So there is good infrastructure there. We've got a great camp. There's an airstrip that we could get back up into operation. It's about, I think, about 35 kilometres to the southeast of Paraburdoo. Newman is not far away as well, a couple of hundred k's away. It's got a gas line going through it. Obviously, there was a previous tailings dam for the previous mining operation. So we think it's in a pretty good position. So we believe we could, at a reasonable cost, get it into production for a low capital cost.
What about exploration to increase the size of it? 1.4 at 2.8 is very good, ladies and gentlemen. A lot of these projects at the moment, 1.2, 2.8 is very, very good. And the economics, I think, will be robust. Can't say in advance. Scoping study, not our pre-feasibility. It's early days, ladies and gentlemen, but I think it's a really interesting time for you. Exploration, are you going to be focusing on the potential of what might else be out there?
Yeah, absolutely, Kerry. And I think in our ASX announcement today, we spoke about the initial, call it stage one, but again, it's early days. The stage one will be on the Mount Olympus deposit, which is an open pit deposit, potentially of up to 700,000 ounces plus. There is potential to go underground there. There are also other deposits, such as the Peak deposit, which I think is a couple of 100,000 ounces, plus other regional exploration. We've got about, I think, 250 square kilometres of ground there. So we think it's highly prospective to add further ounces. But, really we wanted to make it stack up and see if it could stack up just on this one deposit to start with. And then the rest will just be cream on the cake. So
just to go back, this is going to be a single pit development. Is that correct?
Yes. Yep.
Okay.
And interestingly, what happened with the high gold price, we actually had two deposits, and again in the announcement you can actually see some of the cross sections. But because of the high gold price, the two pits have actually combined into one major pit, which is what we call Mount Olympus. So it was Mount Olympus and West Olympus. They now combined into one pit. So again, gold price increased gold price, Kerry, makes a lot of these projects, start to fly, and hopefully we'll be in that situation. But even though we have re-optimized the pit and we're looking at different scenarios, we're still trying to be conservative as well, because the gold price can move either way. And I know we're all fairly bullish on gold, but we have done this re-optimization at much lower gold prices, at both $4,000 and $4,500, just to be conservative. We want to make sure that if this does go to the next stage, that we're doing it properly and conservatively.
Well, Luke, I think the future looks very bright for the gold price. But having said that, ladies and gentlemen, the gold price could pull. This is just my view at the moment. The gold price could potentially pull back a little bit. That'll scare the bejesus out of all of you. But let me tell you, then we're going to be off to the races. Just to have a listen to some of the interviews that I've done from the Rick Raw conference recently. That pullback is nothing to be frightened of, because I think we are just at the start of a gold bull market. That's what Rick Raw thinks. That's what Frank Juster thinks. That's what Grant Williams thinks. So don't worry about the short term. Look at the bigger picture. Luke, I'd like to just finish up by asking you 3 reasons why you think people should sit up. I think we've given them more than 3, but sum it up for us, Luke, if you would, and give us 3 reasons you think people should sit up and take notice of Kalamazoo right now.
Well, firstly, because we now own 100% of the Ashburton Gold Project. The project's owned by us now. We have a strong gold price that's $2,000 higher than when we entered into the option with De Grey and subsequently Northern Star, which has changed the economics of this project, as it has with a lot of other gold projects, Kerry, so which we certainly understand. We've got an enormous amount of data and information that's been generated by both De Grey and Northern Star over the last 18 months, along with what we've been doing. So that's enabling us to fast track this scoping study, which is now fully funded as well. So we're ready to go. We're looking to release this scoping study in Q4, and that'll show the optimal pathway for this project. But very exciting times, and well, we'll see how it plays out over the next couple of months.
Well, I don't be a stranger then, because there's a lot going on at the moment with Kalamazoo, ladies and gentlemen. As you heard that, De Grey have given them all the data, as have Northern Star, so that they can fast track that scoping study. Great environment for them. They own 100% of the project. And most importantly, they are fully funded. So we'll get Luke back on in the not too distant future to see how he's tracking along. But for now, congratulations on getting the project back. Very exciting times for Kalamazoo Resources. Thanks,
Gary. Bye-bye.